Welcome to the Creative Plan Podcast Network. Join us as we share our favorite RPGs, one-shot games, tabletop games, reviews of items, and convention panels, and other exciting things that we run into from time to time. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Kelly, aka Trixie from Ragnarok and Roll, a Scion to Ragnarok story, and Tilda Wimblewick from D&D Journey of the 5th Edition. First off, I would just like to say thank you to everyone for listening to our varied adventures, as well as for rating us on iTunes and RPGpodcast.com. If you haven't rated us yet, we would greatly appreciate it if you could. And if you're looking for more ways to support our efforts, we are now on Patreon, a great site where you can help us continue making more podcasts, as well as some special surprises for our patrons. If you can, please look us up at www.patreon.com/cppn. Every little bit helps. And again, thank you for listening.
Hey guys, welcome back to Creative Plan Podcast Network. Said that all loud. I'll probably have to edit that down a little, but welcome back to RPGaDay 2018 for the month of August. Now is the 5th year this August. We're again asking tabletop role players everywhere to tweet, blog, YouTube, Instagram, Tumblr, and Facebook their hashtag RPGaDay answers to celebrate everything cool, memorable, and amazing about our hobby. And I got a couple different voices, which is great because it's our Friday night Genesis Steampunk Extraordinaire group.
Woohoo!
Airship Gallivant on Twitch. So guys, this is your first RPGaDay, which is great. We've done it for 3 years, but it's now RPGaDay's official 5th year, where basically we just get to ask random goofy questions and give some answers. So for August the 5th, what is your favorite reoccurring NPC? Who would like to go first? And feel free to introduce yourself
Kelly.
And shamelessly plug any social media that you have. Chemistry Girl.
I'm Kelly. I'm also Stevie from the Chemistry Girls. I'm also Temperance from the Tea Scouts and the Tucson Steampunk Society. But we had this Wednesday night group with the Lady Knights of Adventure, all ladies group, and there was this one imp. Modius.
Best NPC ever.
Yes, I very much enjoyed that evil little bastard and his interactions with the group. My character and him got along pretty well, although he
did kill the paladin in one shot.
Yeah, well, the paladin did start it.
So what made him your favorite recurring NPC?
Well, just because the way he would interact with us, he was very, he was lawful. He was a lawful evil kind of guy, but
he was
chaotic,
lawful.
But each of the players had a different relationship with him. You had his protector, which was Golda,
our cleric,
our
good cleric of night,
who actually rescued him.
Saved him many a time.
Transformed into a rat, and she
took the magic
off the
ring.
enchantment. The paladin and him hated each other. She was always trying to kill him, and she failed miserably at killing him. And then, of course, the warrior, who never says anything,
Nicole
tried to help. Oh my God, I'm like, he and I were kind of cool, We're like, yeah, hey, I would have killed that guy if you hadn't killed him for me. Hey, to be fair, my character, he had threatened to put my character back in the cell.
Mm-hmm.
No. My character was in the cell for twice as long as any of the other characters without magic, and she was a bard. So she was very upset not being able to deprestidigitate and clean herself. But we all had this different relationship with him. And every time we'd have this interim, it'd be Modius. And never let him teach you a lesson. Oh my God, that's a death sentence.
Basically, since you guys probably haven't heard of that one, is they're all magic users in that group that are in a magic castle, that the teacher of this castle was murdered by some of his evil students because he takes everybody in.
Right.
And the evil students were destroying the castle because it had all his enchantments empowering it. Once he died, they started breaking down. So like all these magical portals to like hell, heaven that had safeguards, the safeguards were falling apart. Modius was his familiar.
Okay.
Now Modius has this secret agenda. He wants gems because everything in this place is based on gem currency, not coin, because gems are used for components and spells. So he's looking at the group going, give me gems, I'll do what you want. Problem is he's also the, master, my master. He's got a reason that he wants these gems.
Right.
He's doing a mission that
We
the
want
group
the
doesn't
gems
quite
for the
know
same
about.
reason, though.
Okay.
Because there's lots of magical teleportation circles that require you to deposit a gem that you lose. But Modius has another thing that he's doing with the gems as well. So there's this great currency of, they can buy him off to do things and help. So if they get stymied with bad rolls, Modius will gladly come in and do it. But the problem is that one of the first interactions when they found this rat in a bird cage and they took the magic ring off his tail, which turned him back into the imp, because the evil students trapped him in there because they knew he works for the boss, not for anyone else. And all of a sudden the paladin said, well, what do? I teach Modius teach lesson. What kind of lesson? And his scorpion tail went thwack into the paladin's neck, to enough to drop her to 0.
We were level 1.
Oh.
Yeah, and Imp's stinger is like way overpowered for their level. They're a level 1 creature for a group, and as a GM, one Imp can take out half of a group with no problem.
Especially since they're smart.
Yeah, and they plot, and they shapeshift, and they turn invisible. They got lots of great
they
points
fly.
in the thing. And in this castle, the groups realize that there's lots of little strategically placed vent holes that a rat-sized creature can crawl in and out, because Modius is always popping in and out. And like when Modius doesn't like someone, like an evil teacher, he'll help the group out when it's in his best nature. But he's a little obtuse when it comes to some things because he's been trained to teach and let people learn the school of hard knocks, because that's how true knowledge is gained from his point of view. Because he's a creature of hell and he was raised by being beaten regularly, so,
What was the name of the fixer in the Shadow Rookie that Scott ran? He was
Mr. Johnson.
Yes, it was Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson.
That's a common name in Shadowrun.
Mr. Johnson was a great NPC. He basically, so his shtick was, of course, to give the group their runs and things like that. And so he basically acted like he knew what was going on. And most of the time he didn't, except, of course, being Shadowrun. There's always the one thing that he didn't quite know right.
That little
That
important
little
detail.
important detail. So then one of the things was that through Mr. Johnson, our DM also had us going to different clubs around town, to different sections, to see the different kind of atmospheric stuff in the Shadowrun area. So that I liked Mr. Johnson. He was neat.
Especially if a GM plays him really well.
Yes.
You get that personal feeling where
yes.
he's not trying to screw you over,
He's not
but
trying
shit's
to-
gonna get left out.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Sometimes deliberately, sometimes not.
It's not always intentional. That's why you get paid the big
And
bucks.
it's just business. It's not personal.
Yeah, that's why you get the
All
union.
business is personal. What are you talking about? Now I think my favorite NPC way back in the space opera days. So we're talking 30 years ago. There was an NPC that was simply called the Tinkerer. And you never played in this game. But basically he was a merchant. And I guess the closest thing for modern audiences to think about him would be like Mr. Universe, but with things instead of information.
Okay.
And the price of his things was pretty much predicated entirely by how much you amused him. So you can get some really good deals, but there's also, if you didn't amuse him at all,
If you're no fun,
yeah, if you're no fun, you're no fun. If you've pissed off one of his friends, then it's like, sure, I'll sell you that thing that will kill you. It looks like the thing that you want, but it's not. So I think that was my favorite, and especially recurring NPC. He would show up not regularly, not every time, but probably at least once every story arc. Usually because we needed a thing.
So it becomes a great,
Yeah, it's
figurehead
kind of
character.
in the Quest video games, it's like going into town and seeking out the merchant.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Which definitely goes back to that GMs don't dick your players over with the merchant. Be decent. Make the merchant interesting, not this guy out to screw the players.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Although every once in a while he wouldn't screw the players. Sometimes he'd screw a player.
Especially if they weren't fun.
Yeah, if they weren't playing the game. So, no cookie for you.
I sense air quotes in that game. What's today's game?
Pretty much.
See, for me, I'd have to go with recurring NPCs, one that I've used habitually, like a old tool in the toolbox, which is Slug.
Oh.
Slug is a goblin that likes working with people. Basically, in many versions of D&D, Pathfinder, Palladium RPG, I've always used this whipping boy goblin who's been victimized by other goblinoids of the bigger variety, that if any player takes the carrot of make the little twerp a deal, and he'll upgrade from his douchey boss to a new douchey boss. Only it's a player character douchey boss, and he'll basically do things. Like when we did the D&D starter set, we introduced him because Jocelyn was playing a fighter noble, and she basically seduced with charm this goblin, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna use Slug. So of course Slug does these wonky things, like he pretends not to like being bathed, but he really likes it. He pretends not to like pretty clothes, but he really likes it. He pretends not to like being in charge, but he's actually the goblin who's 6 sided his chest when he's on a job. And as the group found out when we revisited the group for our anniversary game, that he realizes that the keep has this magic rug, that every time you lift up the rug, there's a silver coin under the rug. And of course, for those that know the historical thing of you leave a coin under your rug to see if the help is honest or not. Well, since most adventurers realize the goblin's just going to keep taking it, you just accept your losses and realize the goblin's going to keep taking the coins. So Slug gets to realize that he's that important. And of course, it's a fancy version for an NPC that will hold the donkeys or the wagons or or the oxen or whatnot.
Or run messages in town
and be really important. Or he's that great NPC that when the group's had that nice break and you need to bring the band back together, he's the guy that shows up and it has that that montage scene where somebody's working on something and here comes Slug in his splendid outfit because that's what he spends all his cash on, or at least he promises to pay off and only drops off the first payment because he's not better than the playing characters. He just plays his own character well. And you can't kill him because he's endeared to the group.
It's that lovable little scoundrel.
Yep. I love Slug. Slug.
Although in the D&D Journey of the 5th Edition's version, he didn't like the perfume as much, but Droop.
Oh, Droop. Yeah, Droop fell in love to having...
We wound up getting a second goblin as a servant.
Jocelyn's noblewoman collects things.
Yeah, so...
She collected a hobgoblin, too.
So, he absolutely loved it. He was super helpful. He was this cheery little goblin.
He was the smallest runt of the litter and realized, I don't have to be beaten every day.
So Slug would kind of like...
Slug had to prove that he was the lovable...
The goblin on charge.
Bobby Singer over him.
Yeah.
I had a player character that collected demons.
Demons.
Hey,
it was accidental. The first one was accidental.
The first one?
No, the first two were accidental. The third one was kind of done on purpose.
There was actually an old RPG where that was actually the theme of the game.
Collecting things?
Collecting demons, specifically. The different demons had different powers.
So it's kind of like Pokemon, but hellish.
Well, this was actually before Pokemon, a long time ago, and it was based off of
Was it the White Wolf one?
No.
No.
It was based off of Silver Bird book.
Oh wow, that is going back. Yeah.
Where basically it was one of those where if you took it long enough, you could almost translate the demons into intelligent AIs that had different power controls.
That's cool.
So
it's all about that
kind of like you kind of like sync with them, and then they do things for you.
Mm-hmm.
No, not Silverberg. Robert E. Howard, the Conan guy.
Oh, yeah. The Conan guy. That guy.
Yeah. Only it was a different world, and basically it was run off of demons.
Ironically enough, the first person I ever did D&D with was like his great nephew.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
See, that's because of course Conan is the baseline for every fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Magic is bad, swords are good.
And this was the exact opposite, where magic was everything, and I think 3/4 of the characters didn't even bother carrying a dagger.
They're like, hey, when magic is the best multi-tool in your pocket, why bother?
Right.
I mean, and that alone is a great pretense of, like, in D&D, take a level of warlock, because you're trying to be a demon wrangler, Find out those demon true names and use that shit. Because that could come in handy. Being a warlock, not to be a baddie, but to be a good guy.
Kind of non sequitur, but back in the day, more than 25 years ago, because it was pre-AJ, when we were at the, I think we were at the executive still.
Okay.
But there was a dagger in the art show. Now, one of the things that I never understood about the D&D damage scales is that a short sword does 1d6, and a dagger does 1d4. And I understand that, a 4 is as low as you go. But short sword, d6, dagger, because, most of us are thinking daggers like hunting knives.
Yeah.
d4. I could never understand that. But this artist came in with a dagger, and it was a delta blade. The base was probably like 3 inches wide, coming down to like this just sharp triangular point with this blood groove, and the blood groove by the quillions was this beautiful cut work.
Oh, wow.
And the blade had been anodized, so there was this really subtle rainbow hue throughout the entire blade. And that blade must have been that long and that wide at the base. It's like, yeah, that's a D4 dagger.
Yeah, that's a full-blown
The
dagger.
name of that dagger was When Magic Fails.
Because we all grew up with that old-fashioned D&D. When you were that caster, it's 1, 2, done. Pull your crossbow or your dagger. That's all you got left.
Or your staff.
That's one thing I love with 5th edition now is you have cantrips you can keep casting all day long. Baby spells that are easily resisted and do little damage except for poison spray. It's like 1d8 damage. It's like
B.
Sting. Because that's all I can do.
Well, there used to be a cantrip that was called B, which
Yeah.
would summon a bee that you could put on someone's helmet.
And watch them dance. Ow!
I was also personally fond of waxing the bottoms of people's shoes.
Hey, grease, that's a good spell. I mean, we actually had that conversation in our evil goblin group, because we have a group that's all hobgoblins, bugbears, and goblins. And they actually debated, because they're fighting this room full of all plant creatures. And they're like, the grease spell, which slicks everything in a radius, is that flammable? And I'm like, as a GM, I won't say no, but I'll say, what do you all think? But it's going to work both ways. So eventually, 3 or 4 levels from now, I'm going to use it on you and torch you all in a room. Are you thinking it's okay at this level for you guys? Because they're like, well, if you were to spread baking grease, but I'm like, guys, I mean, we won't bring science, because I've many times let them light a flask and throw it like a grenade. Because in science, a flask of oil would have to be brought to temp and then thrown and burst into flames like diesel gas, It can't be lit cold. But it's like, what do you guys say? So, of course, that way the group gets their consensus, and then that's part of the science that will carry on from that moment.
Of that world.
Yeah, that is our fiction. We've established that, yes, the grease spell can be set on fire. God help them all when that gets used against them.
It's kind of like the Cannonball of Wonder. You've never heard? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, Cannonball of Wonder. You take a wand of wonder, you deliberately make a wand of wonder, and you stuff it inside a cannonball that's frangible, so when that cannonball hits the enemy ship, all of the charges of
Discharge
the
it
Cannonball
once.
of Wonder discharge at once.
It's like the whole arrow with the bag of holding and the black hole and it's magic and physics. Don't put it together. Bad things happen.
I love the Cannonball of Wonder.
Especially if it's one of those versions of D&D where your wizard can keep making them.
Or Artificer.
Yeah. Which
I could continue to make them. The first one was, don't miss with this one and don't drop it.
I can see it now. Someone drops it as the ship banks, and all of a sudden it rolls. Can they catch it in time?
Well, if it rolls off the ship, it's okay.
But what if it rolls hard enough and hits the rails?
Well, then we're fucked.
But Eberron is coming to 5th edition, which will be interesting because we'll now have a deep version of D&D with flying airships, magical goggles, and magically powered steampunk contraption people, which will be nice to have Eberron back in the old D&D world.
Yeah, this was the Starjammer version of Pathfinder.
Which, that was a fun one.
Yeah.
So that covers the reoccurring NPC.
And then some.
And then some. Hey, if we want to go crazy, we are allowed to go crazy. I'll just edit it off and nobody will ever know. Or I'll look at it and say, this is gold. Alrighty, guys. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Creative Play and Podcast Network. And feel free to enjoy our other shows, such as D&D Journey of the 5th Edition and Scion Ragnarok and Roll, a Scion hero to Ragnarok story. Thank you for listening.